welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today we're going to be going over what's new with classes in the pre-patch, the Wrath of the Lich King pre-patch that came out at the last reset, so Tuesday for NA. Well, I say Tuesday for NA, they had about a 12-hour delay on their maintenance, which I'm not going to lie, I find quite funny, because ultimately it is annoying to have that 12-hour maintenance, but at the same time you get it closer to your EU counterparts because we get it a day later anyway, so quite fun in my opinion, but it's also not fun for those who had to go through the 12-hour delay. I do empathise with you in that regard, so one of them things. But yeah, Tuesday for NA, even though it was late, and Wednesday for EU, and I believe it might be Thursday for the Oceanic and Asian countries as well. I'm not too sure. I believe that it is, though. I believe that they get it a day after EU. So, yeah, let's get straight into it with the weekly news, as always. We have Nurgash, Muck-formed, Morgeth, and Antros as our world bosses for this week. The Fated World Boss and the Fated Raid for this week is Morgeth and Sanctum of Domination. So make sure you hop into that raid, get your gear that you want from that raid. It will all be up to scale and up to your item level that you need it to be. As well as killing Morgeth will give some very decent loot as well. I think the equivalent to a normal raid. So definitely make sure that you kill him this week. For, if not just the gear, the anima as well and stuff like that. The bonus event for this week is skirmishes. So you gain 50% more honor during any skirmish that you do, PvP skirmish. So instead of 300 honor, you'll get 450 because you get the extra 150 from the event. The brawl for this week is Classic Ashran. Now, Ashran is a battleground that is severely underrated in my opinion. I think that it's really fun if your PC can handle it, obviously. It is a 40 versus 40 battleground, and the ultimate idea is to push the opposing faction back into their base and kill their leader. Now, you have various PvE elements that can affect this. You have stuff where you can get a 100% damage boost. You usually give this to a caster, a warlock, or a boomkin is very good choices for this. You have world bosses that can spawn. You can turn in certain shards or something to summon your faction's boss, etc. So Ashran is a very underrated PvP battleground. I think it's more because it is a giant battleground that it hurts a lot of people's PC performance. That and it's in a expansion that just didn't do well in general because of lack of content. So it's always looked down upon in that regard, but I think it's very underrated. Classic Ashran, instead of the Ashran that we have today, is basically Ashran will go on forever. It can go on forever. There is no timer. You can just leave whenever you want, and it's no big deal. The ending conditions are you kill the boss. That's it. If you don't kill the boss, the game will never end. It's as simple as that. So if you want to spend a few hours in there just having fun, running around, killing Horde forever, be my guest. It is a very good place if you have the Gladiator Sanctum for your garrison, because you can get the achievements and stuff for that, so you can spend a lot of time in Ashran doing that. The mythic affixes for this week are Raging, Volcanic, Tyrannical, and Shrouded. Raging, when mobs get to 30%, their damage is increased by 100%. So either kill everything really quickly or just help your tank kite the mobs. Very simple when they get to this sort of range, typhoon them, vortex them, you can nova them as a mage, make sure there's no other melee in your group, slow them with Earthbind, whatever you have, it all helps. Volcanic, so make sure you're watching your feet, don't get hit up by the volcanoes that are underneath you and erupting. Tyrannical, so bosses and the minions that they spawn have a bit more health, so make sure you take or do a bit more damage to the bosses. Make sure you save cooldowns maybe for the boss or something instead of just the pack before. And obviously you have the seasonal affix, which is Shrouded. This is the Season 4 epic still, and it is basically the Nathrazim are hiding within the mobs in the dungeon. You kill these Nathrazim and you get a buff for it, a stat buff, and this lasts until the end of the dungeon. Very simple. And the spell that we're going to be looking at this week and the history of it is Dispersion. So Dispersion obviously came out in Wrath of the Lich King, hence why I'm looking at it now, as this is where its journey started. So in patch 3.0, it was added in Wrath of the Lich King. This was a pre-patch or the start of Wrath. The first change that it got is now clears all snares and movement impairing effects and makes you immune to them while dispersed. It makes sense. You're a fart cloud, essentially. You shouldn't be able to be slowed. Unless there is a fan, in which case you should get pushed the direction that the fan's blowing. But, that's just my opinion. It got a small change later on, about several months later. Its cooldown is reduced to 2 minutes, down from 3 minutes, which makes it very good. Its next change came 2 expansions later in Mists of Pandaria. So 3 years later, it is no longer a talent. It is now a baseline ability for Shadow, which is really good. This is when they did the overhaul for, talents. They did the overhaul for the talent system, so it wasn't the talent system that we have in Classic today, it was the talent system that we have in Retail today, or depending on when you're listening to this, in Shadowlands and before that, because obviously Dragonflight is going back to the original sort of talent system, which is really fun. 2 patches later, so several months after the first Mists of Pandaria change, it now belongs to the Shadow Spell School, which makes a lot of sense. And it got its next change in Warlords of Draenor, over a year later, actually. Dispersion no longer restores mana instead, or restores mana, was 6% every second. So Dispersion was just a damage reduction. It didn't do anything. It didn't heal you. It didn't, regen mana. It was really weird. Just a pure damage reduction. Then it got its change in Legion 7.0. Damage reduction effect decreased to 60%, down from 90%. Additionally, Dispersion now prevents Void Form from draining Insanity while active, now available at level 58 instead of 60. So this was good because you could pop out and you'd still have Void Form, you could still pump some damage. After your Dispersion, you didn't have to, choose Disperse or Pump if, you're on the fence and stuff. You could keep the Insanity that you had in Void Form, which is really good. Then it got hotfixed, so Void Form stacks no longer increase while Dispersion and Void Torrent are active. That makes sense. I think Void Form in Legion was basically, it kept stacking up and you kept doing more and more damage the longer that you had Void Form up, and it kept draining more and more Insanity when, the more stacks that you had. So it kind of makes sense that it doesn't give you stacks if, your Insanity isn't going down. In patch 7.1, it is now available at level 48 instead of 58. And a small hotfix about a month later fixed an issue with where Dispersion, Void Torrent, and Swirling Void Potion are not always pausing Insanity generation, which makes sense because it is kind of annoying and it says in the tooltip that it does pause that. And then it got its final change in Battle for Azeroth in 8.1. Dispersion now reduces damage taken by 75%, up from 60%, and additionally provides 50% increased movement speed for the duration, is now available at level 28, down from level 48. They really did bring it down in terms of the levels. So Dispersion has been a main sort of defensive cooldown for Shadow Priests in the expansions of Wrath and beyond. It has been, for PvP anyway, even for PvE, you can survive sort of raid mechanics with it, you can soak with it. So it is very good and very useful in certain PvE fights. But honestly, it's more of a PvP thing, and I think that's kind of what they were basing it around in terms of PvP. That would be my guess anyway, purely because 60% isn't necessarily a massive damage. It's a very good damage reduction, don't get me wrong, but it's not like, Turtle for hunters. It's not like Ice Block for mages. It's not an immunity. It's not a quick damage reduction. It is very much I still think it's one of the best damage reductions in the game, to be honest with you. 75 damage reduction on a 1.5 minute cooldown now, I think it is. Something like that. And it also heals you for 60% of your health if you take the talent. So, yeah, it's still one of the best forms of defensives in the game, in my opinion, on a 1.5 minute cooldown, or 1.5, sorry. But you have other things that are like Bark Skin, where it's 20% and you can be a bit tankier every minute. Or you have the giant immunities like Ice Block, which don't feel as good to press if you press it at the wrong time, etc. So I think Dispersion is one of the most fun abilities. You just turn into a fart cloud. It's like, yep, all right, see ya. And you're gone. You're gone. It's absolutely amazing. I like the little animation for it as well. You literally just become a cloud. I think of the cloud from Rick and Morty whenever someone disperses. I think it was like season 3 or something that was. But yeah, that's kind of what I think when someone presses Dispersion, and just good little fun ability to use, especially in PvP, because it's like, well, you're not killing me now. I've pressed Dispersion at a good time. You can die through it, but you've got to be very low in order to die through that. But let's get on to the main meat and bones of the topics. So what is changed for the classes in pre-patch? I'm going to do 3 classes at once here. So I'm going to look at the Druid, Paladin, and Mage to start off with. If I have time, I'll look at other classes such as, Rogues, Warriors, etc. Otherwise, I will be doing that throughout the pre-patch and as the pre-patch, carries on, because there is a few more weeks until Wrath of the Lich King, so it will give you a full sort of guide on what classes are good in pre-patch and going into Wrath of the Lich King. But we will start off with 3 and see how we go. Might do more, might not. Might not even have time for 3. Might be a long episode. Who knows? But Druids. So we'll start off with the Balanced Druid firstly. What has changed for Balanced Druid? Firstly, Nature's Splendor, the 3rd row in the Druid talent tree. Basically, it just increases your casting speed by a significant amount. Oh no, sorry. Nature's Grace. I completely went over the wrong name there. So Nature's Grace is just a straight up 20% spell casting speed for 3 seconds whenever you get the proc. And this is instead of your next spell cast being 1.5 seconds quicker. It's very good. You can have most uptime on this if you're spamming Wraths. With Heroism, you're spamming Wraths. Your Wrath can be at least like a 1 second cooldown or 1 second cast time now. So you can really keep up this very good buff, in all honesty, and it is very, very useful and something that you really need to do. Going down the tree, you obviously have your spell power, like talents, so increase your spell power by 4% of your total intellect. You have regen mana, which you don't necessarily need anymore, as there are no longer Oomkins. You might be at level 70, but when you hit 80, honestly, mana will not be an issue. You will not be experiencing mana problems when you are at max level. But the big changes are at the bottom of the balance tree. So you have Alchemy Frenzy for those who do PvP. Attacks done to you while in Moonkin form have a 5% chance to cause you to go into a frenzy. This is rank 1, by the way, so this can go up to 15%, I believe. Increasing your damage done by 10%, causes you to be immune to pushbacks while casting balance spells, and restores 2% of your base mana every 2 seconds. This lasts for 10 seconds, so 10% of your base mana. This is insane for PvP, as mana can be an issue, and in the longevity of things, having the extra 10% damage, having the extra mana that you get back can be the big difference if you are being targeted. Also, it will all evolve around this spell if you're a PvE player, Eclipse. If you do not like the way that this sounds, Balanced Druid is probably not the class for you. So Eclipse, when you critically hit with Starfire, you have a 100% chance, when it's got 3 out of 3, of increasing damage done by your Wrath by 40%. When you critically hit with Wrath, you have a 20% chance, or 60% when it's max, of increasing your critical strike chance with Starfire by 40%. Each effect lasts for 15 seconds, and each has a separate 30-second cooldown. both effects cannot occur simultaneously. This is how powerful you can become. When you get eclipses, druids pop off. If you get a lunar eclipse, as it's known, where your starfire is increased by 40%, you have heroism up, you have your nature's grace up, which is increasing your casting speed by 20%, and you're absolutely pumping a boss, you are definitely going to be one of the top DPS by far. The damage that Starfire does when it's got a 40% increased crit chance, you've got heroism, you've got a quicker casting speed, you are absolutely pumping the DPS meters. It is so much fun and it's so great to see. And it gives Boomkin an actual mechanic to like do. It no longer are you just pressing Starfire. You're not just pressing Starfire. You're actually pressing like multiple rotational buttons. So Starfall, when we get onto that, Boomfire, Insect Swarm, if you've gone into like the improved Insect Swarm. But honestly, you kind of don't want to. You kind of just want to be rocking your eclipses and stuff, using your treants, etc. But it will all revolve around your eclipses in PvE content, because that is what gives you your damage. And the only bad thing about this is if you're pressing heroism and then you're fishing for a proc of eclipse, it can't be fun, because you're basically getting downtime on something that you're trying to fish, or fish for it. Fishing for it means that you're trying to proc the eclipse. Essentially, you're trying to get that buff on you. But honestly, it's great fun, especially the Wrath one, with Wrath cooldown or Wrath cast time being 1 second. 40% damage increase to it is absolutely insane. At the moment, Wrath hitting about the same amount of damage as what Starfire did at the end of TBC, if you're like full Sunwell Plateau geared, with the solar eclipse, the Wrath eclipse. So it is really good, really powerful, and it is a really, really important mechanic for Boomkins. Going below that, you also get Earth and Moon. So this is just a straight up damage increase. Your Wrath and Starfire spell have a 100% chance to apply Earth and Moon effect, which increases spell damage taken by 4% for 12 seconds, and it also increases your damage by 2%. So this goes up to 6%, I believe, for your spell damage, and 13% for the debuff that you apply to enemies. This is just a straight up damage increase, so it's absolutely insane. You want to take this, 3 out of 3 talents. And then the bad boy, Starfall. Starfall is the big cooldown that you want. So you summon a flurry of stars from the sky on all targets within 30 yards of the caster. All targets, this doesn't discriminate. If something is not attacking you, it will be attacking you if it's within 30 yards and you press Starfall. That's all I can say. Be careful where you use this, essentially. Targets within 30 yards of the caster, each dealing 145 to 167 arcane damage. Also causes 26 arcane damage to all other enemies within 5 yards of the enemy target. Maximum 20 stars. Lasts 10 seconds. Shapeshifting into an animal form or mounting cancels the effect. Any effect which causes you loss of control of your character will suppress the Starfall effect as well, which is a bit annoying, I'm not going to lie, but it is a counter in PvP, and Starfall in PvP is very good. It is very, very good. The shapeshifting into any animal forms is kind of annoying, but I kind of understand. The numbers, the damage numbers that you see there, it looks low, but honestly, Starfall is such a big DPS cooldown, it is unreal. It is very, very good and very, very potent. It's crazy, to say the least. So, with Eclipse and Starfall being added, Boomkin is a powerhouse at the moment. It is very good and it is very, very enjoyable. If you look towards the Feral Tree, you now have an active cooldown in terms of Survival Instincts. While active, this ability temporarily grants you 30% of your maximum health for 20 seconds. This can be used in cat form or bear forms. After the effect expires, you obviously lose the health, which makes sense, but this is an active cooldown for Druid tanks and it is very, very good. For Druid tanks, you basically just become a lot tankier in general with survival of the fittest. This can almost help you get to defense cap without even trying, essentially. It increases all of your attributes by 2%, reduces the chance you'll be critically hit by melee attacks by 2%. This can stack up to 3 times, so 6% in total, and increases your armor contribution from cloth and leather items in bear form and dire bear form by 11%. So this is very good. This is very good. This makes you super tanky, and essentially you can get defense capped with this, so you are uncrushable, uncrittable, stuff like that. It is very useful, not to mention the passives that you get, where it will just straight up reduce damage if you are affected by a crit, but ultimately I don't think that will be necessary. I think it's a crit. It might just be a normal attack, so one of them things. So Primal Fury is also just a nice rage generation for bear tanks. It gives you a 50% chance to gain an additional 5 rage anytime you critically strike, or you get a critical strike while in bear form, and your critical strikes from cat form ability add combo points. So 100% chance to add an additional combo point if you crit, which is really good. Cats kind of needed this quicker combo point generation for their damage rotation. And also feral druids, like feral cat druids, also get a lot of DPS increases with their mangle, their rip, their savage fury, primal fury, I believe it's called, sorry, is basically now just a damage increase rather than a hindrance. And it's all about keeping your uptime with savage roar and stuff like that. I'm primarily looking at bear tanks because this is kind of where they differ at the moment. They kind of get a lot more separated from kitty cat, essentially. Did they switch it out in Cataclysm? So they gave Guardian Druids their own talent tree, or was that Mr. Pandaria? Might have been Mists when they reworked the whole talent system. Would have made sense. For cats and bears, I guess, but this is primarily PvP cats. You have your infectious wound or infected wounds. This is very good for PvP in the sense that if you have no other slows, like a Death Knight with you, so your Shred, Maul, and Mangle attacks cause an infected wound on the target, and this reduces movement speed of the target by 16%, their attack speed by 6%. This can stack up to 3 times, so I think about a 40% slow and about a 18% attack speed slow. So this is really good, but obviously if you have a slow or a PvPing with someone with a slow like a Death Knight or a warrior with hamstring, then it's not necessarily needed, but it is a welcome talent. Bear tanks also get King of the Jungle. While using your Enrage ability, your damage is increased by 15% at max level, and this is where your Tiger's Fury comes into play. Your Tiger's Fury ability also restores 20 energy, stacking up to 3 times, so 60 energy, in addition to the mana cost of bear form and cat form being reduced by 60%, I believe. So this is where your Tiger's Fury really comes into play. It is a Thistle Tea for rogues, essentially. So it is very potent, very powerful, and it becomes a very good cooldown for kitty cats in Wrath. And going right down to the bottom, you obviously have your new damage cooldown, your Berserk. While active, this ability causes your Mangle in Bear to hit up to 3 targets and have no cooldown, and reduces the energy cost of all your cat form abilities by 50% as well. This lasts for 15 seconds, but you cannot use Tiger's Fury while Berserk is active. It also clears fears and makes you immune to fear as well. So this actually is Berserker's Rage, essentially, like warriors have for druids. So you can use this when you get feared by a priest or whatever, and it can be very, very destructive against priests. So that their main sort of CC essentially is that fear, and it allows them to get some distance. But if you pop this immediately after being feared, they've got nothing. You're kind of on top of them for the duration of that Berserk, and it is really, really potent, very powerful. And for Bear, it is very nice just to get some aggro on that target. Looking towards Restoration now, you get a lot of good stuff, a lot of basically quality of life changes, in my opinion, but a lot of the stuff happens towards the end of the tree. So with your Tree of Life, you can now use more spells while in Tree of Life, and you're no longer hindered by a 20% movement speed, which is what I did in TBC. You can cast stuff like Healing Touch, Regrowth and stuff in your tree form, rather than being taken out of tree form and, having to cast Hots in tree form, and then, big heals outside of it, etc. It is more user-friendly, is the word I would say. You have improved bark skin for your PvP druids out there. It grants an additional 160% additional armor contribution from cloth and leather items while in travel form or while not shapeshifted. Increase the damage reduction granted by bark skin by 5% or 10% max, and reduce the chance your bark skin is dispelled by 35%. This is a 30% damage reduction for your bark skin, a natural 160% additional armor contribution just from anything, so you become about another 5% damage reduction from just physical damage, which is really good. And then you have your big cooldown at the end, Wild Growth. This is a AoE heal rather than, a single target hot, and this basically allows you to AoE heal like every other class at the moment, without using Tranquility. So heals up to 5 targets or party members within 15 yards of the target. Over 7 seconds. The amount healed is applied quickly at first and then slows down at its full duration. This is really good. 6-second cooldown. You can have this up 100% of the time, basically. Very good, very powerful AoE heal, and very good in dungeons because, 5 people in a dungeon heals 5 people. Absolutely insane for AoE. Very good. And the utility from a druid is very, very good because you have Revitalize as well. Your Rejuve and Wild Growth have a 5% chance, 15% chance at max level, to restore 8 energy, 4 rage, 1% mana, or 16 runic power per tick. This is per tick. So essentially, every 3 seconds, you could be gaining 16 runic power, or 8 energy, or 4 rage, or 1% of your mana. It could be insane, and it's so good. This is absolutely insane for a druid, and it gives them so much utility. It is unreal. Not to mention, druids have a res now. Every druid spec has a res, so no more waiting around if you're the last alive as a druid healer. Make use of that when you can, because you've been missing it, and I've been missing it for the past few expansions. Moving on to Paladin. Oh my god, I just realised the time. Yeah, we're going to have to cut this into like a few sort of episodes. But moving on to Paladin. Now, Holy gets a massive buff in terms of Beacon of Light. Essentially, Beacon of Light is what brings Holy Paladin back into the game. The target beacon, or the target becomes a beacon of light to all members of your party or raid within 60-yard radius. Any heals you cast on party or raid members will also heal the beacon for 100% of the amount healed. Only one target can be the beacon of light at a time. So, let me reread that actually. The target becomes a beacon of light to all members of the party within 60-yard radius. Any heals you cast on a party or raid member will also heal the beacon for 100% of the amount healed. So essentially, Beacon of Light is an AoE heal. It's not you put it on someone and it just heals that person. I think it heals everyone within the 60-yard radius, if I am, getting that right. I feel like that's right, or I feel like I've just misread that wrong. But nevertheless, Beacon of Light is what brings Holy Paladins back into the game. In all honesty, it is very potent and it is a very, very welcome. Not to mention Aura Mastery is also very, very good now. So causes your concentration aura to make all affected targets immune to silence and interrupts. And it improves the effect of all auras by 100%. So basically, for 6 seconds, you're immune to being interrupted or silenced. And your auras are 100% more effective. Devo Aura or Ret Aura or whatever. You're doing more damage just passively with Ret Aura if you're the healer, etc. So very, very potent. For tanks, now Prop Paladin tanks they're very good in TBC, but they become absolute tanks in Wrath. We're starting off down the bottom of the talent tree again. Argent Defender. Now, what this was a damage reduction when you got brought below a certain percent of health. But instead, it is now this. Damage that you take below 35% health is reduced by 35%. No, sorry. By about 20% at max level. This is what it was. In addition, now, attacks that would otherwise kill you cause you to be healed up to 30% of your maximum health. The amount healed is based off your defense. This healing effect cannot occur more than every 2 minutes. A 2-minute cheat death. That is crazy. It is absolutely crazy how good that is. You can't underplay that enough. It is so powerful. Then you move down to the tree. Argent Avenger's Shield is now an instant cast and silences targets when you go just below it with Shield of the Templar. Reduces all damage taken by 3% and grants your Avenger's Shield a 100% chance to silence your targets for 3 seconds. Very good. Touched by the Light is right next to Avenger's Shield. It is a new talent. It increases your spell power by an amount equal to 20% of your strength and increases the amount healed by your critical heals by 10%. So you don't care really about the heals, you care about the spell power. So ultimately, Paladin tanks use strength now rather than the spell power, and then that gets converted into your spell power. So it is very potent, very good, and Paladin tanks just become absolute units. It's got to say. You also have your spammable ability, quite like Rep Paladins. You have your Crusader Strike in TPC. Prop Paladins in Wrath get Hammer of the Righteous. Hammer the current target and up to 2 additional nearby targets, causing 4 times your main hand damage per second as holy damage. It is a spammable ability. Well, spammable on a 6-second cooldown, I would say. But ultimately, it is very good because it is another rotational button. You're not just pressing Consecrate and Holy Shield. You have to throw in your Hammer of the Righteous there as well. So, moving on to Rets. I'm speeding it up a bit because I don't want the sort of podcast to be too long. I want to cover as much ground as I can with this. But ultimately, I don't want it to be sort of a sink. So, Rets. Rets gets so much love in Wrath. It is no longer you're waiting for a weapon swing. You are an active DPS class. It's amazing. So, we start off with, obviously, Divine Storm. Right at the bottom, an instant weapon attack that causes 110% of your weapon damage up to 4 enemies within 8 yards. Your Divine Storm heals up to 3 party members, totaling 25% of the damage caused. Now, you can further increase this with a glyph to increase the healing by an extra 15%. Ultimately, when you press this ability, a lot happens. You do a lot of damage, you heal, you actually off-heal passively as a ret, which is absolutely insane. And it's an actual ability that you get to press in a rotation. How good is that? It's just good. Going above that, your Judgment, Crusader Strike, and Divine Storm spells deal, whenever they deal a critical strike, your target will take 30% of that damage over 8 seconds. So this is really good. You do 1,000 damage with your crit. It does an extra 300 damage in total over an extra 8 seconds. And this can ultimately have 100% uptime, essentially. If you crit on your Divine Storm or your Crusader Strike, you can have max uptime on this, which is very, very good. Another good thing about Paladins in general is that Exorcism is no longer a undead spell only, so you actually have not a casted spell, but a instant spell to deal damage which does high amounts of single target damage. I say instant cast for Rets, because of the talent, the Art of War. Increase the damage of your Judgment, Crusader, and Divine Storm abilities by 5%, 15%, or 10% when you do 2 out of 2. And when your melee attacks critically hit, the cast time of your next flash heal or exorcism is reduced by 0.75 seconds. This can stack up to 2 times, or so it is 1.5 seconds off the cast time. This means your Exorcism and your Flash of Light are instant cast. This is amazing. So you want to be using Exorcism whenever you have Art of War, make a weak aura for it, when you have 2 stacks, do whatever. But it is a very good rotational spell now, Exorcism, and do not overlook it. Paladins, please do not overlook your Exorcism in Wrath of the Lich King. It's so good, it is so potent, and it is a very good DPS ability, single target DPS ability, I would say. Moving swiftly on to the Mage. This will be the last class that we cover, but mages get a lot in terms of their utility, and they're just absolutely insane in terms of utility. But let's speed run the Mage. Arcane. You get Arcane Barrage, a nice way to sort of include in your rotation. You're no longer just spamming Arcane Blast. Arcane Missiles gets a little bit of love as well with Missile Barrage. Gives your Arcane Blast a 8% chance. This stacks up, of course. And your Arcane Barrage, Fireball, Frostbolt, Frost Firebolt, a 4% chance to reduce the channel duration of your next Arcane Missiles by 2.5 seconds, and reduce the mana cost by 100%. And your Arcane Missiles will fire every 0.5 seconds. So this is basically a Gatling gun missile, Arcane Missiles. And whenever you get this proc, you want to be pressing your Arcane Missiles. It is very, very good. You can straight up have increased spell haste by 6% with Netherwind Presence. And essentially, your evocation gets a cooldown now by 2 minutes when you go into Arcane Flows. And your Arcane Power Presence of Mind is also reduced by 30% with this talent. Moving swiftly into Fire. So you have a couple of additions to Fire. You now have Hot Streak, which is a very, very good, as well as, I believe, Fiery Payback. No, it's not that one. I need to find it. But Hot Streak, anytime you score 2 non-periodic spell criticals in a row, so 2 crit on fireballs, Fire Blast, Scorch, Living Bomb, or Frost Firebolt, there you go. You have a 33% chance, 100% chance, when you obviously stack this 3 out of 3, for your next Pyroblast to be instant cast within the next 10 seconds. So essentially, this is how Fire is now. You need crits in order to throw out instant Fire Blasts. It is very, very good, and you do not want to not use this essentially. It is very good and becomes a massive tool in your rotation. As well as instant Pyroblasts, you get Firestarter. Your damaging Blast Wave and Dragon's Breath spells have a 100% chance to make your Flame Strike an instant cast and cost no mana. So ultimately, you can Flame Strike, Blast Wave, instant Flame Strike, Dragon's Breath, instant Flame Strike. That is your AoE rotation. You can get 3 Flame Strikes. You can cast 4 instant AoE abilities all back to back. How nuts is that? It's absolute. I've tried it on my mage, and it's so fun. It's so fun for AoE packs. You're just an absolute machine now. It's no longer just spam Arcane Brilliant. No, not Arcane Brilliance, Arcane Explosion or Blizzard. It is. You have a rotation for AoE packs. Not to mention, you have Living Bomb at the bottom of your talent tree. So a target becomes a Living Bomb, taking 600 fire damage over 12 seconds. After 12 seconds, or when the spell is dispelled, the target explodes for 300 fire damage to all enemies within 10 yards. How insane is Fire Mage at AoE? 5 mobs. 5 mobs in a pack. You put Living Bomb on all of these mobs, all 5 mobs. You press your Blast Wave, you press your Flame Strike, instant Flame Strike, you press your Dragon's Breath, you press your instant Flame Strike, and then as soon as that's done, you can press your Arcane Explosion, and as you're pressing your Arcane Explosion, all of these 5 Living Bombs detonate, one after the other. So first Living Bomb, second Living Bomb, all a second after each other. How fun is that? How fun does that sound in terms of numbers? It's absolutely amazing. And then moving on to Frost. Frost obviously is very good for PvP. You cannot discourage how good Frost is, but you get basically improved water elemental. You can have nearly 100% uptime on your water elemental with enduring winter. Increase the duration of your water elemental by 15 seconds, and your frostbolt spell has a 100% chance to grant up to 10 party or raid members mana regen equal to 1% of their maximum mana per 5 seconds, and this effect cannot occur more than every 6 seconds. You have your brain freeze. Your frost damage spells with chilling effects have a 5% or 15% chance to cause your next fireball or frost firebolt to be an instant cast with no mana cost. This is really good. Frostfire can proc a Frostfire because it has a chilling effect. So ultimately you can just get, instant cast after instant cast after instant cast after instant cast, etc. You've got to be very lucky and the odds need to be in your favour for that, but it can happen. And then you have Deep Freeze. This is what defines Frostmage in Wrath. Stuns the target for 5 seconds. Stuns the target. It is a stun. It is not a incapacitate. It is not a polymorph or anything like that. It is a stun. You can kill people in this. Only usable on frozen targets. So the idea is you summon your water elemental. You start casting a frostbolt. And then you essentially, your frostbolt goes out and then you press Deep Freeze. So only usable on frozen targets. It deals a certain amount of damage, and they are permanently deals a certain amount of damage to targets permanently immune to stun. So if you can't be stunned, it will just deal damage to that target. But essentially, what Deep Freeze does is it classes the enemy as frozen, and what mages tend to like, frost mages, is frozen targets. With stuff like this, increase the critical strike chance of all of your spells against frozen targets by 50%. You have a straight up 50% chance more to crit on this target that is deep freezed. And that is a lot of damage. That is a lot of damage, I will say that. And this is a 30-second cooldown, by the way, so that's crazy in itself. But that is it for this week. Yeah, I'm going to do this next week as well for the other classes. This could take a while. But thank you all very much for listening this week. I do wish to say ads have started to pop up on my podcast. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience that it caused you, but this does help out the podcast and it helps me produce them week in, week out. I'm going to be uploading the podcast from now on onto my Patreon. These are podcasts that do not have adverts, so if you wish to listen to them ad-free, then you can head on over there and check them out. But once again, thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.